welcome into a Week 9 edition of the PressProsMagazine.com Monday Huddle. I'm Bruce Hooley. That is Sonny Folks, and we are happy to have you with us. And boy, do we have some great games to talk about coming up this week. Man, we are jammed with great football. The phrase, they saved the best for last, must have meant MAC football, TRC football, OCC football. Wow, we got a lot of great games to talk about coming up on Friday night, Mr. Folks.
Yeah, and we had a good lead in last week in Week 8 too. I saw you certainly had a good one that you saw with the Pick-Win Tip game, which they're still buzzing about here in Miami County on I-75. And of course, I had the pleasure of seeing New Bremen and Coldwater play, and an exciting game for the fact that Coldwater's had 27-7 in the third quarter, and you're thinking, they're going to start to bust here any second. And the next thing you know, about 8 minutes later, David Holman's got him back within a touchdown, and it ended up 35-28. And just a great MAC football game. This is what they write about across the state, and people question what makes that league and that conference and those teams and those coaches and those players so outstanding. Well, it's just games like that, and it's games like we're going to have this weekend. We'll talk about a couple of them coming up here. And then, of course, the Granddaddies next weekend when Coldwater, unbeaten, and Marion, unbeaten probably, are going to square off in Week 10.
Well, I think it's pretty solid that Marion will be unbeaten because Marion plays host to St. Henry, and St. Henry has one win. I'm not as sure about Coldwater because that is one of the games that we are talking about this week. Yep. Coldwater goes on the road to Versailles. Versailles is a top 10 team in Division 6. Coldwater is the top team in Division 5. The Cavs are, as Sonny said, undefeated, looking really, really good. But whole field is a tough place to play, and Ryan Jones will have the Versailles Tigers ready. So that's one of the big games that could shape the MAC standings. The other one is, of course, Minster with Brogan Steffi, their outstanding quarterback, going to New Bremen with David Homan, their outstanding quarterback. So that's another headline MAC game. Those are the two headline games that we have in the MAC this week. How do you assess those two matchups? Let's start with Coldwater at Versailles.
Well, I would say this about Coldwater. So goes Marcel Blassingame, who you just told me an hour and a half ago was the best player you've seen all year. And I won't refute that because you haven't seen as many players over here as what I have. But I saw him for the first time eyeball to eyeball the other night, and that dog can hunt now. He ran for 147, threw for 167.
Yeah.
He and David Holman, the quarterback for New Bremen, combined for 640 yards of the 774 yards the two teams had together. So that gives you a pretty good idea about what makes Coldwater run. The thing that you have to guard against if you're playing Versailles is they're going to be superbly prepared by Ryan Jones. They're going to come in. They're going to try to take something away. Now, I don't know if you can take everything away from Marcel Blassingame or not, but they're going to be prepared. Defensively, they're going to be prepared to play, and then offensively, they'll hope that they can get a couple of big plays, out of either their passing game with Connor Stonebreaker or the run game with Michael Osborne, because both of those players have shown that ability this year to do that against pretty good competition. So I would say that Coldwater's going to be – everybody's going to make them a favorite because it's the number one team in the region.
Right.
But you're going to have to play. You're going to have to play in that game. It's Week 9, and there's so much pride involved, and it's going to be a nut house there at Versailles. There'll be 3,000 people show up there crammed against the gate, and the atmosphere there is just going to lift those kids, I think, to a pretty high standard of play.
Well, let's go through the rankings here before we get into our other games. Marion Local is on top of Division 6, and Coldwater is on top of Division 5. This is the latest state ranking. Also in Division 5, unbeaten Milton-Union. That's another game we're going to be talking about. The Bulldogs headed to Northridge. Milton-Union is number 8 at 8-0 in Division 5. Down below Coldwater in Division 5, down below Marion Local in Division 6, sits Versailles at number 7. The Tigers have great respect around the state because they have 2 losses. Nobody else in the top 10 has more than 1 loss, and one of those teams in the top 10, new this week, tied for 10th, is New Madison Tri-Village. So Reed Ware and Tri-Village are up there in the number 10 spot, tied with Cleveland Cuyahoga Heights. When you dip down to Division 7, there's New Bremen at number 5. The Cardinals also have 2 losses, but again, those 2 losses are very good losses because they come in the MAC. And Fort Loramie, Spencer Wells playing the independent schedule. Fort Loramie sitting at 6-2, very high up in their specific region. Fort Loramie comes in at number 10 in Division 7. When you move back up to Division 4, we do not have any teams ranked in Division 4, but in Division 3, we have the Tippecanoe Red Devils sitting there at 7-1. As Sonny said, a big win over Piqua. Was it 23-20, I think, on Friday night? Tip comes in at number 4, and you move on up Division 2. Your top team in Division 2 is Akron-Hoban. Number 1 team in Division 1 is Cincinnati-Moeller. Number 2 in Division 1 is Lakewood-St. Ed. And Lakewood-St. Ed plays at Moeller on Friday night. And then next Friday, Lakewood-St. Ed plays Akron-Hoban. Hoban is number 1 in Division 2. The only team that we have, we have 2 teams from Central Ohio ranked in the top 10 of Division 1. Dublin Jerome, cooking right along, bounces back from its only loss at Marysville to get to 7-1 with a big win at home. Dublin Jerome, the Celtics, are number 5, and Gahanna Lincoln, outstanding defense for Lincoln, they are number 9 in the state in Division 1. And we will have, joining us at about a quarter after the hour, a Division 1 coach from Central Ohio that many of you in MAC country know very well, Geron Stokes, head coach at Dublin Coffman. He has the Coffman Shamrocks off to a surprising, I will say it, I've seen him play. I'm surprised they've won 4 in a row. They are 6-2, and they are on top of the OCC Central Division, going to Upper Arlington, also 6-2 on Friday night. And of course, Geron was a 2-time state champion at Minster.
Well, I don't think, you look at football teams sometimes, and that can be very deceiving because you see some kids that find a way to get it done that aren't dressed up very well. That's been my experience in all sports over the years. I always worry about a guy who wears these socks like Pete Maravich did until he starts to play. And then, suddenly you say, I grossly underestimated this player. So, I'll tell you what Geron has, and I had somebody tell me this week from Columbus that knows a lot about OCC football. He says they don't play like they used to play there. He said that this is a team that is aggressive. They come, they work hard. They play to the end of the echo to the whistle, as the old saying goes. And he said they just play within his personality. They reflect his personality. And I'll ask him about that here when he gets on with us because, I watched him. I'm old enough where I actually watched him in high school, and I watched him at Urbana College when he played there and in Wittenberg. And, he was the kind of player that guys around him looked at him and said, I'm going to be embarrassed if I don't play up to his level of enthusiasm and aggression. So I'm sure that's rubbed off on the Shamrocks at Dublin Coffman because they have caught the eye of some people that, just like you said, I don't know how they're 6-2, but if other teams look at them and said, "Nah, they're not going to beat us," well, sometimes you better go out there and prove it.
Well, they do a great job with scheme. They do a great job with formations. And I know that Geron was talking last year that he wanted his team to be a tougher football team. So let's find out what's behind the secret of the Shamrocks' success so far. Let's bring in the head coach at Dublin Coffman, the former head coach at Minster, Geron Stokes. Always great to have you on the show, Geron. Thanks so much for your time tonight.
What's up, guys? How are you guys doing, man?
Well, I'm enjoying having a little time with you. I really am. I was just in Minster this afternoon and told somebody that you were going to be with us tonight, and he says, "Let me guess what he's going to say." He's going to say, "We don't work hard enough. We don't practice hard enough. We're not very good. It doesn't matter how many games we win." And here he said 6-2. And he said, that's Geron Stokes. So it's always great to have you with us. And I remember fondly those post-game interviews with you.
Blast. Yeah. You guys doing good?
We're doing fine. Everything's good over here.
How are you getting it done, Geron? Because I saw you against Dublin Jerome, and, a lot of people from Jerome didn't like your post-game comment, but, you weren't wrong. You said it was 2 teams that night just kind of leaning on each other, and nobody really did too much. You've gotten it done since that loss. You've won 4 in a row, and you're scoring. Your stats don't knock anybody's eyeballs out, but you're getting it done. That's what counts.
the Jerome game was great for us. I thought we were terrible, and we had lost our center that Wednesday night at practice, and we had to move a kid at a Thursday practice, and we were bad, and they were better than us up front. And we said from the get-go, like, we're not very athletic, like we're not going to outrun anybody or throw it over anybody's heads or anything like that consistently. Like, we have to be a line of scrimmage football team. We got dominated on the line of scrimmage up front against Jerome. So we went back and said, look, guys, like, is it coaching or is it coachability? And we said, let's go take the humble route here and say, like, what are we not doing very well from a coaching standpoint? And what are we coaching that you're just not very coachable at? And our kids were awesome with that. Like, they'd pause and say, Coach, I don't know what you're talking about here. This is like, you told me this and this guy told me this, and I'm confused. Like, that's coaching. And then there's other times where we'd say, like, hey, like, we've told you this 672 times. At some point, you got to decide to do it if we want to be good, or let's just all agree that we're going to be very average and like, just keep playing, complaining after the game. Like, that's what we're going to do. So our kids have been awesome since then. Our kids have been awesome since December, but it's just year 2 in our program. And it's never going to be pretty ever. I've learned that. It's just going to be a fist fight every single day. And our group right now is really cool, though. They are trying to do it our way. And when I say our way, like, there's just been a value shift, and that goes with anybody taking over anything new. And they're really trying, really trying. It's fun to see.
Geron, a friend of mine, and I just mentioned this to Bruce a moment ago, I was talking with yesterday afternoon about Central Ohio football, and he has seen your team play. Bob's seen you play. And he made the comment to me, because we've talked about you before, that your team represents your personality as closely as anybody he's seen in recent years. And I remember hearing you say, I'm paraphrasing here, that a little bit of Urbana looked good on anybody. And I just wonder, I always think about that when I hear people talk about you and how your kids interact and how you kind of rub off on them. And can you see some of that rubbing off on them that, you know, I just mentioned before you came on about watching you play in high school and watching you play at Urbana and Wittenberg, and has a little bit of Geron Stokes rubbed off on those kids?
Man, I think our kids are phenomenal kids. Like, they want to compete, they want to scrap, they want to be tough. I think there's a masculinity thing in football. Like, everybody wants to have that. Like, you know, some people call it toxic masculinity, but like, everybody wants to out physical people, and you know, it's what it is. It's competitive. But the group that we had just never trained. They didn't invest. And I don't care what you're doing. I don't care what you're doing. If you want to be good at anything, you have to invest. And our kids invested. They did. And we just had a kid play through a gruesome injury Friday night. He didn't tell anybody. I'm not super proud of how smart he was about it, but he played 4 quarters, ran down on the opening kick, got hurt in pregame, ran down on the opening kickoff, made a huge tackle right off the jump, and played lights out the rest of the game. Went and had emergency surgery on Saturday night. Like, that makes me extremely proud. Like, he's fully invested. Like, he is woken up, sacrificed, poured his heart and soul into something, and he's willing to fight for it. And that, to me, is the coolest part. I don't know if I'm teaching that, we're teaching that, but we're going to work. They tried to talk me out of it in year 1, like, you don't need to do that. That's too much, or you're working these guys too hard. And like, there's one way to do it. There's one way to do it. And I don't care what you're doing. You better pour your heart and soul into it. You can't dabble. And we had dabblers, and we don't have dabblers anymore. The dabblers are gone.
Well, when I watched you, Geron, you know, I was just really impressed with the way you use your personnel, particularly Carson Cox, who's a kid who plays for you as your short yardage specialist. And you get a lot out of him on defense too. And he's kind of your touchdown scorer. As I said, your stats don't, you know, knock anybody's eyeballs out. Your quarterback's okay. He's thrown for over 1,000 yards, but until last week, I don't think a lot of people viewed him as a really good, you know, weapon to throw the football down the field. And you surprised Davidson by doing that and getting up on them early. What's the challenge going to be for you on Friday night at Upper Arlington? Because they've kind of rotated quarterbacks, and then Friday night, James Hayek, their quarterback, I think he had 3 rushing touchdowns and 3 throwing touchdowns. So Justin Buttermore's done a nice job there with UA, and you got a big challenge going into UA on Friday.
Yeah, I think Coach Buttermore is one of the best. I do. He makes me better. I know that. Like us prepping for those guys is very similar to the Tim Goodwin situation. Like you want to play these guys every week because they'll have a plan. They'll expose your weaknesses, and you better be on your stuff. So they're really good. They're really good. They have zero holes anywhere. They attack you really well. You have to defend the whole field. I love it. Like as soon as I turned on the tape, I went, oh boy, like this is the one you want to be a part of. Like this is the one, whether you get beat by 40 or you win in a close game or you win by 4, like this is the game, the competitiveness, like this is the one you want to be in. So we're excited. It's a huge challenge for us. They're the best team we've seen, coaching wise, personnel wise. Like if we're not sharp, we'll get exposed. And then it's that to me is exciting.
The other thing that's exciting is playing teams that have the kind of heritage and legacy that they have. Some of those, UA certainly has one, and some of the other teams, New Albany's got something going on there right now. Westerville, Pick Central, all those teams over there. I know there's you and I talked a little bit about that in the past, about particularly when you were at Minster in the MAC. There's just no nights off, and that's sustaining. For a coach and a staff and a group of kids when you know. You got to, as you say, you got to be on your stuff every Friday night.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's honestly, it's the reason I went and took the Minster job. I wanted that, like that, and it's the same reason I took the Coffman job. Like you've got to be really good. Like we're not afraid to fail. We're not afraid to struggle. It's the situations we want to be in. So you have to be at your best. But we've honestly, God, I feel like we've stolen a lot of games this year. Like we've looked up at the clock and it's like, wow. We had 28 minutes of ball control, or we had 32 minutes of ball control. Like it's like, wow, how did that happen? And it's awesome. Our kids are doing a phenomenal job. Our staff, our defense coordinator was like, man, it'd be really good if we had like an 8th day one of these weeks where we just could like take a day off, because we're 7 days a week now. And in the moment you beat Davidson, it's like, oh, you got the Upper Arlington tape to turn on. It's like, oh, they're really good too. And next week, we'll whether we win or lose, like, we'll go right to Bradley, and it's like, oh man, like they're really good too. I love it. It's the situation you want to be in.
Well, you say that. I don't know how we won some of the games we won this year, but isn't that what you're trying to teach? Isn't that the same as making big plays at big moments and giving yourself a chance? Those are the things you teach. Those are the things you want your kids to learn, because that's what you got to do the rest of your life. You don't know how you get you get my age. I don't know. I look back. I don't know how I got to where I am today. But obviously, you, me, Bruce Hooley, everybody makes, plays when you need to make them along the way to give yourself a chance. Isn't that what you're trying to teach?
I think it's the coolest part about what our team is doing. We were awful. We were awful this summer. Awful. In scrimmages, we were terrible. Couldn't hold on the football. Couldn't execute run game. Couldn't tackle. We weren't playing super hard. And we just kind of like said, guys, look at ourselves. Like, I'm not going to outsmart anybody. Like, you're not going to outrun anybody. You're not going to outthrow anybody. Like, you're not going to out tackle anybody. Like, we better be super tough and super disciplined. Like, we gotta our margin for error is super thin. So like our discipline has to be exponentially better than what it was in the summer. And it really has been. Like, we talk about the turnover battle all the time. We've won the turnover battle the last 4 weeks. Like we got beat by Jerome because we turned it over twice. And we're just not good enough to overcome that type of stuff. Like we're not going to throw it to anybody and take it 80 and, like bail us out where 9 guys didn't do things right and 1 guy did. We don't have that type of personnel. And I don't want to win that way anyway. I'd rather teach the lessons that we're teaching to our guys about, you have to do it right every single day. You have to bring your best Monday through Friday. You have to step with the inside foot when you're asked to step with the inside foot. Like that to me is the coolest part. I think you teach kids is like, this is the path, whether you're going to be a football player or not. Like there's really one path, and it's a disciplined, hardworking, tough path that you got to take.
Geron Stokes is our guest, head coach at Dublin Coffman. I know we have a lot of Ohio State fans, Geron, and you get to coach somebody who's headed to Ohio State. Will Smith is a mainstay on your defense. Just talk a little bit about Will and what you see in him.
Listen, if you guys have not seen this kid play, I would recommend you watching this kid play. And he's an interior defensive lineman, so people don't watch him and say, wow, he was as dominant of a football player as I've ever seen Friday night. People are running away from him all the time, and they're like checking with him. Friday night, they tried not to, and they saw what we saw all summer and then in practice when our offense tries to run at him. Like we in the past, we've had 2-gap players where they could play inside and outside. This guy can 3-gap, 4-gap. Like it's insane what he does. And I say that and I brag about him a ton because he's an incredible football player, but he may be the best kid I've ever been around in my life. He is as naturally kind and nice and has a huge heart, almost to the point where you think you're getting tricked a little bit, because when he plays on Friday night, he is violent and he is nasty. And then when you talk to him, he's like, that's not the same kid that just crumpled their left tackle. Like he's so easy to root for. He spends his time volunteering all the time. Like he's a phenomenal teammate. And he has freaky genetics that put him in a really, really good spot football wise too. So just an awesome kid. Very, very easy to root for as a football player and as a person.
Came from pretty good pedigree.
Man. And there's something there, Sonny. Like he's got this hunger that you and I can't even think about. Like there's something there that he is a hungry. There is no ceiling for this kid. Eli Wolf at Minster was very similar to this, and he was just a skill guy. Will is just interior. He doesn't lose a rep, man. He doesn't lose a rep. Not in practice, not in games. He just very rarely does he ever lose the rep. There's something there that's really special.
Yeah.
You've talked about the importance of doing the little things and doing the little things right every single step. And so I kind of am curious about how you would view, if you can close this deal, win at Arlington and take care of Bradley at home, winning an OCC division in your second year there. You kind of strike me as a guy that isn't something you worry too much about, that it's after you do it, it's something that you'd look fondly at. But in terms of establishing, your the buy-in there, it'd be hard for any kid in your program not to see the wisdom in doing things the way you want them done if you're able to win a division in your second season.
The reporter asked me about that Friday night after the game. I, honest to God, I'm not super intelligent, but I didn't know what league we were in. I knew we were in the OCC, but I didn't know what league we were in. I've never honestly thought about that. Our AD tried to talk me into it. Like, that's a big deal. Like, you should be excited. And it's like when my wife gets her haircut, I don't notice that stuff. I don't care. Like, I don't know what I honest to God am super proud of how our kids have shown up every single day. And honestly, if winning, obviously, I'm not stupid. Winning obviously validates a lot of things. It validates the off-season work. It validates how we practice. It validates how we do things. I get all that, and we need that, right? Like you to get the flywheel going, you have to have that. I understand that, but we're never going to honor a league title. That's not what we're going to do. I just that's just not natural for me. I'm not going to be fake and try to punch up something that's not there. I am going to honor. We are going to honor our kids, their work ethic and who they've become, because we had a really selfish group, really selfish group, and it's become a super unselfish group in a matter of 8 months. And I'll honor that over any league title. The game of football isn't that important to me. It's the people that become from the game of football that's super important to us, and that's just who we're going to be. I don't really apologize for that. Whatever league we play in.
We've got a question from Facebook, Geron, from Randy Luthman. He says, can Coach Stokes make any comparisons between coaching at Coffman, Division I, and Division 6 or 7 Minster? Any comparisons between the two?
Listen, I was talking about this last night on our drive home from our staff meeting with one of our assistants, and I said, I am so glad I took the Coffman job, because at Minster, it's like, man, we did it. We had it rolling. The kids were awesome. There were some fights there, but it was a phenomenal place. And you always wondered, man, the big school stuff. You see these guys. I remember looking at Coffman when I was at Urbana, just wow, they looked like Spartans. And it is absolutely no different than Minster, than Urbana. Are there some better players out there? Yeah, because there's however many boys in the school. Like there's going to be better. Like, but we have a ton of Minster kids that would play at Coffman. Like they're on our roster. Like it's no the coaching. I'd rather play Tim Goodwin and get exposed in that aspect. But Justin Buttermore's as good as they come. Like the coaching's coaching, man. They're at the end of the day, they're high school kids. They need positive role models. They need held accountable. They need pushed. They need challenged. They need held to a standard. That's everywhere. Small school, big school. Like I'm a small school guy. I'm a relationship guy. I really don't enjoy the transactional piece of the big school where you don't get to know everybody and it's so football, you're chasing scholarships and stuff. I don't really enjoy that. And our program's never going to be that. But from a comparison standpoint, I wish more people understood what I'm talking about. There is zero difference. There's just more people. That's it.
Geron, I just got a text on my phone from a listener named Joe Bauer who says, fascinating to listen to Coach Stokes. And I wonder if Coach Stokes, the player in high school, could have played for Coach Stokes, the coach, now.
So my head coach is one of my biggest role models, my biggest mentors. Dave Carroll was a tough guy, and he was hard on us. He challenged us, and I absolutely despised him in high school. Like I hated him. I wanted to transfer. I wanted to just focus on basketball. But I also had other coaches who let me just be an idiot. Like I was an idiot in high school and they just let me do it. And you look back on it when you're 25, 30, I tell our coaching staff this all the time. Like you, as a person, you look back on it, he's like, why did you let me do that? Why didn't you tell me? Like, it's like speaking in front of a room with your zipper unzipped. And it's like, guys, you could have told me this right away. I would have just zipped up my zipper. Like, why didn't you tell me that? I would have easily fixed that. Or why didn't you demand the best from me? So I did not love it at the time. And a lot of our people on our roster do not love it at the time, the way we coach. But there's plenty of testimony there that says, like, when they're 25 or they look back and say, man, I'm sure glad you held me to a standard that I really didn't like. I really didn't really feel good at the time, but I'm sure I'm glad that you did that for us. So I would have loved to play for our staff.
Well, Geron, let me send you off with this because I was at the Ohio State, I think Wisconsin game a couple of weeks ago, and got to meet Will. He and one of your other kids were down the guest of the program there in the end zone before the game, and we talked a little bit about you and just made some small talk. And I was so impressed about, as you say, what a good kid he is. But I was impressed about how proud he was to talk about Shamrock football and his relationship with you and what all of you have accomplished in a very short amount of time. And so I know you're doing something right, because when you have kids go out like that and they're proud to talk about their football team and their teammates and their buddies and those relationships that you told me about, we don't know how to play for each other. I think he does, and he likes to talk about it. So congratulations. Good on you, son, for doing a great job there. And I think a little bit of Urbana is looking pretty good at Dublin Coffman right now. Look good on anybody, you said.
I appreciate you guys.
All right.
Thank you, Geron. Good luck Friday night.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much.
All right, Charles. Stay healthy.
Yeah.
There you go. Geron Stokes, head coach at Dublin Coffman. Nice of him to give us his time tonight. We appreciate all the coaches who do that. And I'll tell you what, it's fun to interact with him. And the thing we love about it, Sonny, is, whether it's Geron or Chip Otten or Ryan Jones or Brett Pierce or whoever it is, they all have one thing in common. And it's not that they love football. They do. That's not the most important thing. Is they love their players. They love their players. They sacrifice their players. They defend their players. They hold, as he said, hold your players to a standard. That is never going to go out of style in coaching. That's what coaching is. Coaching is leadership. Leadership is investing in people. And Geron has been very special at it. And I'm not the least bit surprised that what he did that worked at Minster is working at Dublin Coffman.
No, I'm not either. And another thing, it just struck me about any time I'm around him, all of those guys, as you say, and you say correctly, they love their kids. But all those guys represent a mindset of knowing that you're only on this earth so long. You've got so many opportunities, and why not, as he said, invest and make the most of the time that you have here. Doesn't matter if you're playing football, if you're trying to be a math teacher, an English teacher, a farmer, whatever it is, a drill press operator, be the best you can be. Just most of the opportunities that you get, invest in them and become good at something. And, whether you're a good worker, a good dad, good husband, good whatever it is, just be good at it.
Well, your participation in the Huddle show has been quite good lately, thanks to our friends at Skynet Internet Services, who make your broadband connection impenetrable. They're from your location in Miami County.
Have you been keeping track of how many weeks consecutively it's been since I dropped off the show?
It's been ever since predates your connection through Skynet Internet Services. I know that.
Well, listen, I am the living proof that if you've got sketchy internet and you live out in the rural areas, parts of Miami and Shelby, Dark Preble, Logan, Clark, Champaign, I got the whole list here. They write up for me, all Glaze County, all those places, Mercer County, any place in West Central Ohio, call Skynet Internet in downtown Pickle, right there on Main Street. And I'll give you the number. It's 937-773-0998, and they can fix you up. I don't know if they can cure warts on your cat, but they can fix your internet, because we couldn't. I have terrible internet, had terrible internet, and they fixed that for me just like that. So give Craig Grissom a call. The nice thing about it is he'll answer your call. You're not going to get somebody that says, we'll give a message, and they may call you in a week when they get off a service call. He will take care of you. And you like that kind of service. You like the kind of relationship. Skynet in Pickle on Main Street, 773-0998, Craig and Mike Grissom. Thanks for bringing it up.
You are quite welcome. Now, speaking of calling, Coldwater will be placing a call to Versailles on Friday night. We talked about that matchup a little bit. We did not delve too deeply into Minster going to New Bremen. Now, New Bremen has 2 losses in the MAC, so it looks like New Bremen's out of it. Minster still sitting there with 1. You have been quite fond of Brogan Steffi, but you've, I think, spoken as glowingly as I've ever heard you speak about a high school player of David Homan. So what about that quarterback matchup? Brogan Steffi and Minster against David Homan and New Bremen.
Big brother, little brother. The advantage David Homan has, he's played for 4 years. He's had success, won a state title 2 years ago with his older brother Dan on that 2020 team that beat, and we got a good question here from Ben up in Trumbull County here we'll get to in a minute, beat that team from Warren JFK. So he's had success. He's had some disappointment. And I think the biggest thing when you look at him is how he handles, like the other night, when it's 35-28 and they had 2 shots to tie that game in the last 4 minutes. And he had a pass skip off somebody's hands, incomplete. And then the last time he had the ball, two minutes later, they get the ball with 2 minutes. And they got 60 yards to go. And you know he's going to move them into scoring position. And a tip ball that goes into the hands of A.J. Himmelgarn for an interception. And he just handled it. You look there and you watch a kid, not with his head in his hands crying about losing, just processing what I got to do to be better in that situation the next time. I mean, his mind is like just works overtime all the time that he's out there. That's what impresses me. He's the quickest player in the MAC. You might say, well, it could be Marcel Blasingame too, because he leads the MAC in rushing. He's got tremendous statistics. He's a great leader. But David Holman's the quickest player, the most dynamic player I think I've seen this year, because he plays on both sides of the ball. And he's just as effective, just as scary on defense for them playing center field as what he is on offense. Brogan Steffi, as a sophomore, can make all the throws. He's daring. He's fearless. He loves to compete. Seth Whiting will tell you. Mike McClurg, a basketball coach at Minster, will tell you he's the same player in basketball that he is in football. He's not afraid to lose. And he's going to go out there. He's got all those young sophomore wide receivers, can outrun people down the field, and he's going to put it out there for them. They're going to run under, they're going to catch it, and you're going to get burned. And they've won 6 in a row now, I think, 6-2, and 5 in a row. They're 6-2, and those kids just believe when they go out there now. Suddenly, we found success. It looks pretty good on us, and we're not afraid to lose it. Mm-hmm. So we're going to go in there Friday night, and they're going to be competitive. Now, it's going to be they don't have the greatest run game. New Bremen has a good run game with Hunter Schaefer. And they got more experience on both sides of the ball, and they do have a little bit of that championship dirt under their fingernails from 2 years ago. Those kids were all around. They remember what that felt like. So advantage New Bremen, but I'm very impressed with what Seth Whiting has done with that group of freshmen last year. They got just the tar kicked out of them. Had a lot of injuries, came back, didn't quit, got better, got bigger, got stronger, and here they are at 6-2.
Well, and those two losses are nothing to be ashamed of. Maybe the margin in the Marion game, 34-0. I'm sure Minster would like to have that tighter, but their other loss was to Fort Loramie in the season opener, and that was a very tight game, a 12-point game, 39-27. They have won 5 in a row. They beat Fort Recovery by 20. They beat Anna by 18. They beat St. Henry 31-12. They were all over Parkway by 4 touchdowns, and then handled Delphus last week by 3 touchdowns. So they rack up the points.
And you know something? There'll be somebody who says none of those 5 teams are very good football teams. None of them are Marion. None of them are Coldwater. None of them are Versailles. I mean, they're not that kind of football team. On the other hand, I said to Seth Whiting a couple of weeks ago, we had an interview together, the style of the way they play, they can play against anybody, because at any level of football, one of the toughest things to do is defend the forward pass for 48 minutes, because somebody's going to slip, somebody's going to fall, somebody's going to make a mistake, somebody's going to get behind you, catch the ball, and you're beat. So that brand of football and that style, and to have that kind of personality and that daring at your quarterback, just a sophomore, I want you to understand, 6 feet, 180 pounds, that plays, doesn't matter who you're playing, it plays.
Well, and I would say, too, you might be right about individually, in the MAC, you can say, well, here's a matchup. This team's in the lower half of the standings. This team's in the upper half of the standings. The team in the upper half of the standings ought to win the football game. But the MAC is to high school football a little bit like the SEC is to college football, in that the cumulative effect of playing Fort Recovery, Delphus, Anna, week after week after week. If you're not sharp every week, somebody who's in that lower division can jump up and surprise you. Now, that's not going to happen when St. Henry plays Marion Local this week, of course. But if you're not on point, if Minster would have a bad week of practice, not pay attention, get too high on its press clippings or something like that, they could get caught unawares. The MAC is that good. It's that deep. So I don't ever discount any team that can win 5 in a row in the MAC, because that's obviously a very, very hard thing to do. Those are programs, all of them, with a lot of pride. All of them won state championships. Anna has, Fort Recovery has, Delphus has, St. Henry has. So when you're playing a program that's won state championships, you're playing a program that knows how to win. Maybe it's not their headline year, but you're playing a program that knows how to win, and that's why the MAC is year in and year out the best football conference, pound for pound, in the state of Ohio. So what Minster's done is very impressive. There would be those who would say their best football is ahead of them with a bunch of sophomores. But you know what? We thought that about New Bremen 2 years ago. We thought New Bremen was, a year ahead of schedule. And
true.
They got hot in the middle of the year after they lost to Coldwater, and they didn't lose again.
Well, and they had a quarterback then in Mitchell Hayes that's a lot like the ones we're talking about. Carson Bay last year. We're talking about Marcel Blassingame this year. We're talking about David Holman. We're talking about Brogan Steffi. Mitchell Hayes was that kind of leader out there. He could run, beat you with his feet, beat you with his arm. He had Dan Holman, the older brother of David, who could catch it in the crowd. They weren't afraid to go out and give it their best shot and see if they weren't good enough on a given day to win.
All right, so we have another game that Friday night will really is kind of a league title elimination game. Milton-Union's 8-0. They're going to Northridge. Northridge is 6-1. A lot of good football players on that field on Friday night. Blake Broomball, Michael Elam. You got, why can't I think of the young man's name? Defensive back. Is it Connor Brown? Connor Brown. Some really good football players. And Northridge has a really good football player in Jeremy Henry. He's number 2 in the TRC in rushing. He's number 1 in tackles. So Northridge is a really, really good football team. And if Milton gets past that one, and they played Northridge last year in a mud wrestling match at Milton, then Milton's going to have to come back the next week at home and play Riverside. Riverside's on top of that league right now. So Milton, they had some tough games early. Kind of the TRC is not as deep as the MAC. They've dominated here in recent weeks. They have designs on a long postseason run. I picked them as my surprise team this year to make a long postseason run before I I never dreamed Coldwater would be as good as it's turned out to be. But I still have a lot of confidence that Milton-Union is going to make a long postseason run, and a good way to gear up for that is with a win at Northridge this Friday and a win at home against Riverside next Friday.
Well, I know there's a lot of people listening to us that are snickering and saying Northridge has never won anything. They always find a way to lose. But let me tell you something. Before you take them lightly, consider, I can think of 4 or 5 players on that team. You mentioned Jeremy Henry, Jaden Kelly, Teron Hill. They've got speed. They've got playmakers. They can bust one, and usually do sometime throughout the game. The thing that they've got to do Friday night, Milton has got 18 returning seniors on that football team. A lot of experience, and you can't fake experience. Those kids have been through a lot, seen a lot, done a lot. They got to play error-free football for Bob Smith. They can't go down there. They can't jump off sides. They can't have bad penalties. They can't give up touchdowns because of a holding penalty clear on the other side of the field, 40 yards away from the play, and have a play called back. They got to play smart football. They got to focus. Bob says, got to focus, got to concentrate every down. You're not going to beat Milton-Union. You're not going to beat a Riverside team, and they didn't beat a Riverside team 4 weeks ago because they just didn't play well that night. They've got the players. They've got the players to make a good show against Milton-Union. Now, I didn't think Eaton should have beaten Milton-Union last year in the playoffs.
Right.
But Milton-Union didn't play very well that night. Eaton kind of kept it together a little bit. I think you wrote that game.
I did, yeah. That was a tough one for Milton.
The better team did not win that game that night. So that's why I say Northridge has got the athletes. You'll see them, or whoever writes that for us this week. You'll see that they've got the speed, the athletes, and the people to go out there and do it. They just have to play better football in big games like this one. That's a habit that's good to get into.
Well, and the thing with Milton is they can just flat out score you. I mean, they've scored 100 more points than anybody in the TRC. So that offense with Nate Mortar, he's just got to distribute the football, get it into the hands of his playmakers, play turnover free, and then turn it over to the defense. And I mentioned Connor Brown. The guy I left out is Ozzie Gregg. Ozzie Gregg's having a great year for Milton-Union. He's number 2 in the league in tackles behind Jeremy Henry. So Milton number 2 in the league in sacks as well. And Peyton Mayfield has 4 interceptions. He's tied for the league lead in interceptions. So Milton-Union's got a lot of experience. They've got a lot of firepower. They've been pointing toward, as you said, getting back into the postseason and moving further on. And because they are, now in Division 5, last year they were in Division 4. Am I right?
Yeah, they were 4 for a long time.
So they've dropped down to Division 5. And obviously, we talk a lot about Coldwater in Division 5, and with good reason. They're the number 1 team in Division 5. But I'm sure that Milton-Union is believing that if there's a team that's going to come out of our area in Division 5, they're going to be that team. And I don't know how the playoff bracket will stack up, but we'll see if those 2 teams meet down the road, because if they do, man, that could be some kind of football game, Milton-Union and Coldwater.
Well, and I grew up around Ironton, Ohio, and they're Division 5. The Tigers have a great tradition down there. Been to the state final game 10 times, only won it twice. But people down there keep asking me when I talk to them about Coldwater and their reputation, because they've won 7 titles. And I love to tell them, Coldwater, I don't know how the brackets are going to show that you may get to play Coldwater, but you might have to play Milton-Union, and they've never heard of Milton-Union.
Yeah. And
so you can't overlook a team with 18 returning seniors with talent like Mortar and Mayfield and Connor Brown and Nate Broomball and people like that. You just cannot overlook talent like that. And as you said, I remember you saying that's my dark horse for making an extended run this year, and they could do it. But this Friday night will tell you an awful lot about Northridge, who is going to make the playoffs. There's no question in Division 4. They're in 4. They're going to be a playoff team. And whether they win Friday night or win the TRC crown, they're going to get Phi Beta Kappa Friday night that's going to help them in the playoffs.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And Northridge, as I look here, is wow, they're a 12 seed.
Yes, they are
6-1.
Yep.
In Division 4, Region 16.
Yeah, that's strength of schedule working for you there.
That's a shot. Well, that's totally a factor of them playing in the TRC and
it is.
Playing teams like Troy Christian and a lot of the small teams in the TRC, because Graham is 4-4 and Graham is the 7 seed right now, and Northridge at 6-1 is the 12 seed. So if I'm number 5, if I'm McNicholas and I have to play the 12 Northridge in the first round, McNicholas is 5-3. Better pay attention to what you're doing there, McNicholas, because you might get upset by a 12 seed. Yep. Now let's move to Central Ohio. We have, as I said, the 5 OCC divisions are taking shape. Pickerington Central, no surprise, is on top of the Buckeye. They had a tough start, but they played a really tough schedule. Pick Central's 3-0 in the Buckeye. Gahanna is 3-0 in the Ohio. They've already beaten New Albany. New Albany plays Pick North this week at home. So New Albany needs a lot of help to get ahead of Gahanna Lincoln in the Ohio. We talked with Geron Stokes, the head coach at Coffman. They are on top of the Central right now. But Geron with the line of the night. The line of the night, Sonny folks. Geron Stokes said winning a division of the OCC makes no more impression on him than when his wife gets her hair cut.
And men everywhere are going, oh.
That's a heck of a line right there.
And it's so true.
It's so true. Every guy's like, yeah, I can imagine that. The Cardinal division is locked up. Jerome, Thomas Worthington, Marysville, and Olentangy, Berlin, all 2-1. And Westerville South has a pretty firm grip on the Capital division. They are 5-0. Big Walnut's 4-1, but Westerville South surprised Big Walnut early in the year. So the headline games this week, let me think now. We have Grove City, 5-3, very high-powered offensive team with their quarterback, Matthew Pappas. They play Gahanna Lincoln. Lincoln's defense is really good, but that Grove City offense is a challenge for everybody. As I said, Pick North is at New Albany, and the game in the spotlight is that Central Division matchup, Coffman going to UA. Both teams 6-2, both teams angling for playoff seeding. UA would dearly love to get back in the Central Division race, because who knows, maybe Justin Buttermore puts more emphasis on a Central Division title
and a haircut
and than a haircut that his wife gets. Like Geron.
Let's ask him the next time we talk to him.
Next time we talk to Justin Buttermore.
Talk to us in the hardware store.
He did in Nutter Hardware, Justin Buttermore last year. That's right. So that's what I have. You said you had some questions for me from the Reader Speaks, or some from our great and loyal readers, Mr. Fletcher.
I do. Jack Reese here writes in and says, I want you guys to say, tell us about who's the best player you've seen play this year. I'll let you go first.
All right. You prefaced mine earlier, but I've given it some thought since you mentioned that I picked Marcel Blasingame, and I saw Marcel play at Bell Fountain. That is Bell Fountain's only loss to Coldwater, and Marcel was lights out that night, running the football, throwing the football. I was astounded how well he threw the football, how accurately on the run, to his right, to his left, didn't matter. He was the best quarterback on the field that night, which I know will be a surprise to those who are gaga over Tavian St. Clair, the Bell Fountain quarterback. But I gave it some thought, and I got to say, for what he does for his team, because he's not a quarterback, I can't put him number 1, but he is number 2 on my list, is Jackson Cleather, kicker, punter, Tippecanoe. Man, I'll tell you what, that young man has a tremendously strong leg. He gets to the ball from his kicking stance to the football as fast as any kicker I've ever seen. And he had a 50-yard punt the other night that really flipped the field at a time where Piqua looked like they had really good field position coming to them. And Jackson Cleather averages 42.5 yards per punt. He has 3 47-yard field goals this year, and the one I saw Friday night would have been good from 57. He had that much on it. So he's headed to Bowling Green on a full scholarship. Tip is like kicker you, Sonny. They got Ben Sauls at Pitt, and they've got Jackson Cleather headed to Bowling Green.
I really like your answer. I really like and respect that answer, and I'll tell you why. I grew up with a kicker, a special teams player in my house, and went on and played a little bit of college football. And I'll tell you why it's such a good answer is because kids are working so hard now to put themselves in a position of success to be a punter and a kicker. I know Jackson Cleather has worked very hard. Right here in Piqua, Jackson Trombley is
he's
a fantastic talent for Bill Neese and the Indians as a punter and a kicker. And he's going to play on Saturdays.
Yep.
Place here in the very near future. But, coaches now across the state, you talked about it the other day. Blackie talks about it in Columbus. People from all over the state talks about that kid that's worked hard, that's come on, that now when it's 4th and 3 or 4th and 4 from the 31-yard line, they're not afraid to run that guy out there and say, kick a 40-yard field goal on the wide high school uprights for us and put points on the board. And they're doing it. They're doing it all over Ohio. And I think it's a fantastic opportunity, way to get on the field, make a contribution, and get yourself a little notoriety and get noticed to play at the next level.
Yeah. Hilliard Bradley's kicker is really, really strong too. I think his name's Jake Walter. That young man's got a tremendous leg too, but he's not a very big kid. That was the thing that impressed me about both Jackson Trombley and Jackson Cleather on Friday night, is that both those kids are put together. And I felt like that game, as it was, you got to get a bead on the score. That game was trending toward overtime. And I thought, boy, this game could go a while with these two kids who can bail their teams out if they get behind the chains and go out there and kick a 45, 50-yard field goal with no trouble, because both those guys can do it.
Yeah. Jack, if I had to give you my answer, I've talked glowingly for a long time, for a couple of years, about David Holman, and he's a great player. But I'm like Bruce, the more I think about it, I don't know how you'd not say that Blake Broomball at Milton-Union High School. And I'll tell you why. He's 6'3", I think, and about 195 pounds. I don't think I've ever seen him drop a football. I don't think I've ever seen him drop a pass. Now, his coach down there told me one time that he dropped one last year right in front of the home dugout. Right in front of me on the sideline, he dropped, a screen pass, and he said that's the only one that he's dropped in 4 years. But Blake Broomball can jump out of the gym. If he gets his hands on it, he's going to catch it. He runs the jet sweep for them because he runs a legitimate 4-4. Plays center field in their secondary, returns kicks and punts. I know he's going to lead the TRC in scoring, because anytime he gets his hands on the ball, he's a threat to go the whole way. And if I'll tell you, after seeing Dayton look the way they did against Butler the other day, put points on the board, if I was Rick Chamberlain, I'd get me a Winnebago, and I'd park it in the driveway of the Broomball family, and I wouldn't leave there until that young man said, I want to be a Flyer, because he's a perfect fit for that. He can play, I think, at any level of football.
Yeah, I think he can play high D1.
Any level of football. He can play Division I in a heartbeat. And I know he'd probably get opportunities to do that. But, as a walk-on, but I mean, he could go to Dayton and become a star. He could be the next Adam Troutman out of Dayton. And Adam Troutman had a pretty good day yesterday for the New Orleans Football Saints. So I would say that Blake Broomball, because he makes things look so darned easy. He's just fluid. He's instinctive. He's always where the ball is on defense, and they want to get the ball in his hands on offense.
I will tell you this right now. Blake Broomball can play at any MAC school, and I believe Blake Broomball could go to a Big Ten school like Purdue, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Indiana, and Blake Broomball would play a lot of football and will be at least a 2-year starter at some of those Big Ten programs.
I agree. If Mitchell Evans could get a full ride, this was back in about 2012, 13, something like that. I don't remember when he graduated, but if he can go to Indiana and he can be their strong safety for them for 3 years, at Indiana, 2 years at Indiana, Blake Broomball can play in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
But, I know they're aware of him in a lot of places, and it's just a matter of, like he said, I don't want to write any checks to play college football. I'm not writing any checks. So
no, he shouldn't have to.
He shouldn't have to. But he's a really good.
Yes, he is. All right, what else? Or shall we bid everyone a good evening?
Real quickly, Ben from Trumbull County, he's written to us before, wrote, and he said, how do you compare this year's New Bremen team? I really enjoyed the game story that you guys had with Coldwater the other night. And you write about some nice things about David Holman. He said, is this team, New Bremen team, good enough to get to the final game of the season or the Final Four? Ben, in a heartbeat. Yes, they are. They're good enough in their to get out of their region, Region 28, in Division 7. You know, and then of course the state semifinals is always a crapshoot. A lot of things can happen, but if they get through there, they would be competitive with just about anybody that I see in all the regions of Division 7 in Ohio if they played in the final game at Canton. So I hope that answers your story. They're good. They're good.
Yeah.
They're
right now, New Bremen is the 4 seed behind Ansonia, Fort Loramie, Riverside. You know, I feel about them the way I felt about Versailles last year when Versailles was the 5 seed. And I knew Versailles was good enough to win its region, and I knew Versailles was good enough to win the state, and they knew it too. And I don't think New Bremen is the least bit cowed by the fact that it's lost to Marion Local and to Coldwater. You know, Ansonia is the number 1 seed. Ansonia lost to Tri-Village 37-36. That's Ansonia's only loss. They beat Riverside 36-14. I'll just tell you right now, New Bremen would beat Riverside handily. And so I don't think that New Bremen has to be afraid of Ansonia if Ansonia is the number 1 seed in that region.
They're legit. They can play against anybody. I'm sure you hear my phone going off here now. We've attracted a lot of attention now and we don't have any more time to do that, but we'll save some of these and talk about them hopefully next week. You better sell a little something for Lehman's Hardware there.
Yeah, we want to thank our friends at Lehman's Hardware. They're the exclusive sponsor of the Lowdown, which is kind of a mini version of the Huddle show. I do the Lowdown 4 times a week or so. We demonstrate some of the great Lehman's products on that show. I got one right here. Just hang on.
I knew you would.
It's the Para Hatchet. This is one of my favorite things for outdoorsmen. It's got a bunch of little like bolt hex head things here. It's got your paracord. It's got your flint thing to strike. And
you can tell you've never used one.
Make fire outside? No, I have not, because I have a chainsaw, but that's cheating when you're in the outdoorsman. But this is, you know, old school, and we give away a $50 Lehman's gift card every month. Get your entries in to pressproscontest@gmail.com, pressproscontest@gmail.com. You can order anytime online at Lehman's, 24/7, 365. Use the promo code PressPros10. You'll get 10% off. And particularly for, man, how many fan bases might we have going up to the state football finals? We might have Milton. We might have Coldwater, Marion Local, New Bremen. I know I'm leaving some people out. Tip City, Tippecanoe. Piqua. 4 miles just off Route 30. 4 miles off Route 30. It's a little bit past, well, it's maybe 3/4 of the way there, but it's a great place to get out, stretch your legs, and kill an hour and a half, 2 hours, grab a bite to eat in a cafe. Grab some fudge or ice cream or whatever. You'll love it. I'll tell you this. If you stop for the first time in your life at Lehman's, 2 things will happen. Number 1, you'll say, we didn't have enough time. And number 2, you'll say, we got to come back here. And you'll tell some friends and you'll make it a day trip the next time. It's that cool of a place. Lehman's Hardware, Old Time General Store, Kidron, Ohio. Check them out online, lehmans.com.
Plus, I don't know how you're going to get back on Route 30 without cheese. So you're going to get cheese somewhere between that drive.
Right out there at the corner of Route 30 and Kidron Road. You got, what is that, Schisler's? Is that Schisler's?
Cheese House.
Cheese House right there. What's that special cheese you always get?
Oh, you know me and my hot pepper cheese.
Hot pepper cheese. There you go. All right. Well, we think this edition of the Lowdown was pretty hot. We want to thank Geron Stokes for joining us. We're looking forward to Week 9. We're looking forward to Week 10. The playoffs are ahead. It's really starting to get interesting now. We've got some great teams, great coaches, and great players to cover. We're very appreciative of all you guys being loyal readers of Press Pros Magazine. No paywall ever. That's what sets us apart from other sites. We don't restrict any of our content. We are very glad that you guys are interested in our content. What do you have midweek, Mr. Folks? You got a volleyball game in your crosshairs?
There'll be volleyball somewhere tomorrow night, Thursday. Of course, Friday night's big night for high school football. We've got college football again on Saturday, although the Buckeyes are off. UD gets to wipe the stink off them and go to the Hudson River Valley and play Marist.
Wow.
Up there. So Julie Wright and a player to be named later will be making that trip to write about the UD Flyers, but we will be with them on the road. Fantastic. I think that's Jimmy Buffett and Alan Jackson's sequel to It's 5 o'clock somewhere is There's Volleyball Somewhere. There's volleyball somewhere. That's exactly right. All right. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. Tell your friends about the replay. We'll see you again next week on the PressProsMagazine.com Monday Huddle. Good night. A good game Friday night. That's right.